everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm so excited to be making this because I can finally say that our first year is over. This year just flew by. It feels like a lot has happened, but also not. There are definitely a lot of things to discuss, so I'm hoping that this video can be a little summary of what the second semester at Catalyst looks like. I'll talk about the films we made, the classes, the assignments, the tutors, the classmates, and just life in general, because this year has taught me so much in every aspect. But before we continue, if you haven't already watched the video about the first semester, please go check that out first so that you get a better idea of what the second semester is all about. And also make sure to like and subscribe, comment down below if you have any other questions or if you would like to see more of these videos. Now let's get back to the video. Where do I even begin? The second semester was a lot more stressful because we had kilofilms and megafilms, which I'm about to explain. It was just a lot more work overall. In the first semester, we just learned about the basics, learning how to collaborate with one another for the first time, figuring out how things work on student sets, and just understanding the general workflow. Then in the second semester, depending of course on how seriously you take the classes, it becomes a lot more overwhelming. I think I learned a lot more on the producing side when it comes to planning ahead, organizing everything, problem solving very fast. Those are definitely skills that I've developed a lot the past few months. With the classes though, this time around I didn't involve myself too deeply in them, mostly because we had classes like film processes or research and context, and those I feel were mainly there to help us get through the assessments that we were going to submit. All in all, I'm very pleased with how it all went, so let's dive into it. This time around, we were allowed to make a short film of 5.5 minutes with dialogue. You had to pick out 1 out of 6 prompts, and I chose a musical that displays loneliness through shot composition. I learned so much about dependence and independence throughout this entire process. Not just for myself, but generally seeing how the other teams also functioned. I feel like there's a lot of responsibility that comes to you when you're a director, not only having to manage the team's objectives, but literally figuring out how to make your film when it comes to the location, the props, the extras, the costumes, the schedules. There is so much that needs proper thinking that if you leave it till last minute, it's likely not gonna work out, unless you put your mind to it. So just like in the microfilms, during the making of these short films, everyone had a different role, and once a week you would switch up the roles again. One time you're sound, another time you're director, your assistant director, director of photography. So it's a nice rotation. The only difference is that this time you have 2 weeks for post-production, which meant that while you're working on the next film, you are still editing the previous one. Then another week after that, you're in a different role again, but now you also have to submit the first film that you were working on while working on the second film that you're on. Obviously, not all of the roles are required to be present during the post-production, but still, you can easily get lost in all of this, and I think that's what made it very overwhelming for me. With the microfilms, it was very rhythmic. You plan, you shoot, you edit, you submit everything all within 1 week, and then once you were done, you're done. But here the overlap was a lot more intense. For example, 1 week I was AD, the week after that I was directing my own film, and the week after that I was supposed to be director of photography. So at the time I was just like, okay, this is so much work because you're planning basically 3 different shoots, and at the same time you're trying to see where your priorities lie. I think most people put a lot more focus on their own film. The way I approached it was trying to genuinely give it my all. If you gave me a certain task, I would try to do it properly and on time. One thing though that I think I took a bit too seriously was guidance from the director. And what I mean by that is that I didn't let myself expand creatively. What I'm referring to is when I was editing Matilda's film, I edited it strictly based off of the document that she gave me and the script itself. So I approached it in a very structured way. But afterwards, seeing how she mixed the original edit with her own ideas, I realized that editing doesn't have to follow the script at all. That opened my eyes because that's the beauty of editing. You can create a completely different timeline, a completely different story. And I think that's something that I really want to explore next time, because I wish I had allowed myself to do that during this period. To me, it just feels counterintuitive to not follow the script, but truthfully, there's a lot more charm in editing without such a rigid plan. As you can tell, I have learned a lot this semester. My kilo film was a very long process for me. I had started pre-production in December, and then we shot it in February. I don't know how we somehow made it work during the time frame that we had. We only had the theater available to us for 4 hours, so shooting most of the film in that short amount of time was very stressful, but we managed. Thank God I found the locations on time, but it was still a lot, especially because everyone had different schedules, and we have first-year actors who work on multiple kilo films, so their time is restricted, and everyone is dependent on each other. I think I'll say this though, the biggest lesson I learned is that you shouldn't fully depend on anybody. And if you are alone in making a decision or solving a problem, then you need to have the instinct to solve it yourself. Filmmaking is a collaborative effort. You could do it by yourself, but I think the whole purpose of going to film school is to put different creative minds together and try to make something beautiful out of it. But regardless of the fact that collaboration is what filmmaking is to my eyes, I still think everyone has their own priorities at the end of the day. And if somebody can't be present or help you out in a specific moment, then you need to be there for yourself. In any case, I can say it was definitely an experience. Those 2 months went super fast, and even though it was very stressful, I feel like everyone did such a great job. Everyone's films were a lot better than the first round tables, so I'm just extremely proud to see where everyone is going. And honestly, this is how it should be every time. We should always set the bar higher and higher and surprise ourselves. The same way I described what I learned and how this experience felt to me, somebody else from the class probably had the same journey, while another had a completely different one. And it's heartwarming that we're all growing in our own ways within the same space and the same resources. That's what's so fascinating to me, because we help each other grow, and I believe it should stay like that. It shouldn't necessarily be as competitive as filmmaking is sometimes claimed to be. As for the megafilms, everyone had finally submitted their kilofilms, so we were all just taking a breather, and now we had to make a non-fiction documentary of 8.5 minutes. The teams were self-picked this time, which changed the whole dynamic of the class a little bit. We had a pitch day, which was really fun. Some students decided to pitch their film ideas, and then by the end of the day, the tutors picked which ones they thought would be the most feasible. I ended up being in Alexandra's film, which I was super excited about. What was interesting was seeing how every group had their own workflow. Some teams were a lot more relaxed than others. We had around a month to complete this documentary, which at first sounds like a lot of time, but you quickly realize that you could always use some more. Still, compared to the kilofilms, this process felt a lot smoother because we had way more freedom when it came to organizing shoot days and planning things out ourselves. Some groups started really early, some started later. We definitely started later, but somehow everyone still made it work in their own way, and I was impressed by all the films that were made. I think everyone really tried to give their all into these projects, and you can feel that while watching them. What I was most excited about was the roundtables, because I hadn't seen the films yet, so finally getting to watch them all together really made me emotional, especially towards the end when we watched Sophia's, Shaman and Ness's. It was just very fulfilling, because it proved that with a strong idea and the right people around you, you really can make something special. And just like that, that was the last films that we produced this year. It went by so fast, and at this point we've spent a year together, so everyone knows each other's habits and personalities, and there's something really valuable about being comfortable enough with the people around you to openly create with them and talk to them. So hearing that some people were leaving was really upsetting, because you get attached to people for these experiences. I'm just really thankful for all the time that we spent together, and I wish success to everyone in their own art and wherever life takes them. Hopefully we'll cross paths again someday. During the second semester, I found it extremely difficult to wake up, so I definitely missed more classes than in the first semester, or I would just end up being late. But here is what I concluded. We had editing, but now we learned a little bit more about the history of it as well. We had post-processes, documentary and production. I always enjoyed this class because it's a lot more practical. We learn about how certain sets were created when it comes to lighting and camera work, and instead of just analyzing scenes and discussing techniques, we would also try to recreate some of these setups ourselves while working together and assigning everyone a different role. Those classes are always useful because sometimes you don't actually get that much time with cameras outside of shoots, so having a class that gives you the opportunity to experiment more practically is fundamental. Then we had research in context, roundtable feedbacks, directing characters, industry and audience strategies. This was another one of my favorite classes because it focused a lot more on film festivals and the marketing side of filmmaking with posters, promotion, and more. With our tutor for this class, I feel like we always learn a lot more about the actual industry and how things run behind the scenes, because it's one thing to learn how to make a film and it's a whole other to learn how to sell it. As for development class, everyone gets to talk openly about their process, how they're feeling, how they're doing creatively, and if anybody needs help, they can just easily reach out, and everyone is usually very supportive. So most of the time, it honestly feels like a therapy session, since everyone is just there to talk, give and receive feedback. But at the same time, we also watch clips and discuss films, talk through different ideas, ways to solve different problems. I will say though, I do think the dynamic would be very interesting if all 3 film production classes were combined into one for this class, only because I think the conversations questions would get a bit deeper. But maybe I'm saying this because so far we haven't really gotten a chance to all sit down together since we've mostly been in our respective groups. And I feel like this class will be the best opportunity for everyone to interact more. Along with these classes, we also had workshops that we could join all throughout the year. One thing I do appreciate about the tutors is that they always ask us if there's anything specific that we'd like to develop or focus on, because then we can actually ask questions about things we want to know about instead of only following a strict curriculum. And I think that also helps the tutors themselves because they get to plan the classes better depending on everybody's experiences and skill levels. Now, the assignments were a lot. We had Sync 4, 5, and 6. And the reason why it was so much work is because we also had the films to do on the side. People are depending on you and you're constantly switching roles, but you also need to submit these assignments. So it was just a lot. Sync 4 was actually kind of fun, but only because I enjoy making video assignments. We had to do a director's Q&A video for one of them, and then a show reel. I enjoyed making them a lot. But amongst those assignments, we also had essays and reflections. I can't lie, for the last assignment, I definitely didn't put as much effort into it because it was very close to the deadline and I was also stressed about other things. So eventually I reached a point where I said, okay, let me just submit whatever I have and let's call it a day. It was a little bit confusing sometimes on the writing side because everyone has their own interpretation of what academic writing should look like. Even with the tutors, there were moments where one person would explain something one way, you ask someone else, they explain it differently, especially when we were working on the research essay. Coming from an IB background, I'm used to a very specific academic writing style when it comes to structure, wording, and organization of the paragraphs. So it became a little conflicting because maybe that wasn't necessarily what the tutors were looking for. There were definitely moments where things got a little heated, but eventually I think everyone figured it out. In the end, you're simply trying to fit the criteria as best as possible. The research essay itself was about how films can discuss real-world issues. I would love to read some of my classmates because I think being able to see the literature and thought process behind a film can sometimes be just as impactful as watching the film itself, if not even more. You get to deeply understand why certain creative choices were made, and there are a lot of people in our class who can think very deeply and poetically about filmmaking, which I find really inspiring. The tutors, they are very sympathetic people. They want to help you out, and now that it's been more than half a year, I think they're also getting more comfortable with the feedback that they give. The tutors are always there for us. And our supervisor was extremely kind, but also very honest, not afraid to tell you the truth to your face. And everybody's just down to earth. The tutors are not trying to sell you some unrealistic dream. Instead, they're giving you the opportunity to learn from your mistakes, while also sharing different life lessons based on their own experiences. So overall, I'm really pleased with the tutors. As for the classmates, everyone became a lot more understanding and calm with each other this semester. Personally, I felt way more comfortable around my classmates because we started to get to know each other on a more personal level while still respecting each other's boundaries. I just felt a lot more at ease with everybody. And I can't wait to see what second semester is gonna be like, especially if they decide to make the class groups a little bigger. I think it'd be nice to have that change again. For the second semester, they switched some of the groups up. So it was nice to see new faces and interacting with different people. But for the second year, I really don't know what they're gonna do with the classes. I just hope the diversity still remains, because I think that's one of the best parts of this whole experience. To conclude, it definitely started a little rocky for me, but that was mainly because of personal issues and also moving to a completely different country again, a new city, and having to readapt not only to a new lifestyle, but also to new people in a new environment. But towards the end of the year, I feel like we're growing. We are growing. I can feel it, I love it, and I want it to continue. I want to keep growing creatively, emotionally, personally, just in every way possible. What a year it's been, so many ups and downs, so many people, films, conversations, emotions. There's so much to learn from and so much more left to create. I really believe that as long as you stay motivated, there's honestly nothing that can stop you. And that's exactly why I wanted to make this video, because I want to prove to people that no matter where you start from, whether you're starting at 10% or 80%, you will grow through whatever you dedicate yourself to. I think Catalyst opened up a completely different side of me, creatively speaking. I did have different expectations coming here, but I'm even happier with how everything turned out. Thank you to the tutors. Thank you to Catalyst for making this year possible. I have a feeling second year is going to be better, especially now that Catalyst is switching locations. It'll be way more accessible for most of the students, so that's nice. I'm just thankful for this entire year. And lastly, I'd like to thank my classmates. I feel like I've gotten to know you all in different ways, and I want to thank you for sharing a piece of yourself with all of us. Your art, your energy, your perspectives, your creativity, and I have faith in all of us. I hope everyone is having a wonderful summer, whether you're working on projects, writing, creating your own things, traveling, spending time with your family, or simply resting. I'll see you all in the second year. Thank you for watching this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We're trying to reach 1K this year, so please let's make it possible. If you have any questions about Catalyst or the student life in Berlin, make sure to comment down below. See you soon.